So in this talk, I'll be going through defining what a great accessible experience means. And there's two parts to the talk. The first part is about understanding users and understanding what they use, and then how to make accessibility part of your workflow. And the second part is a very experimental part, which I'm a little bit nervous about, but it should be interesting if people want to play along. So the first part is, how do we get to great? If you're shipping apps, you're shipping accessibility experiences. So whether or not you've actually put time in to making accessibility work well, that doesn't matter. It's still shipping with VoiceOver, it's still shipping with switch control or anything else. It's probably not a great experience. So how do we get to great? The first step is to get to know your users. So when I say the word accessibility, what's the first word that pops into people's heads? And there's no wrong answers.
VoiceOver.
VoiceOver, yeah. Anything else?
Color blindness.
Color blindness, yeah. I mean, VoiceOver is always one of those words that I think, because it was the first really big accessibility feature that Apple had, that's what everything was documented as, and that's what everybody kind of assumes accessibility is. But it's just much broader set of features. And the World Health Organization defines disability as this very complex phenomenon that reflects really the interaction between features of a person's body and features of the society in which he or she lives. So kind of rephrased, disability never holds anyone back. Disability is not something that people need to overcome. The barriers that exist are created by society. And this was from a WWDC session this year, which is really, really good. You should definitely check it out if you haven't. And really, when you kind of narrow that down further, disability only exists if we don't provide ways to include people, right? So we actually end up making people disabled when we don't include them. Even things like blindness is this really complicated thing for people to understand. When you say oh, so-and-so is blind, you simplify that into thinking, well, they can't see anything. But only 5% of people who are blind can't see anything at all. The other 95% of people can still see something. So you should really stop making assumptions, which is difficult because as humans, this is the thing that we do. We make assumptions based on our own experiences in social and working contexts. If you never really come across anybody who's blind or deaf, you start thinking, well, there's probably not that many people who are. But it's 1 in 7 people in the world who are disabled. This is a quote from Neil deGrasse Tyson. There's so much praise for the human eye, but anyone who's seen the full breadth of the electromagnetic spectrum will recognize how blind we are. There's loads of things that people who are fully abled, there's loads of things that we can't see, that we can't do, that we can't sense. Cats. Obligatory cat picture. Humans, our hearing range is 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. Cats hear almost up to 80 kilohertz, right? But they don't view us as disabled just because we can't hear things. The picture on the left here is how somebody with typical vision would view an image. On the right is actually how a dog would see it. Going on that, I would say dogs are pretty visually impaired. That doesn't look as good. You're missing a lot of detail. The color, is missing. But yet we rely on them to help us get places because they have other senses. They have other ways of doing things. And it's really important to remember that screen readers, as an example, they're not exclusive to people who are blind. Lots of people use screen readers. People who have extreme dyslexia, who might not be able to read things very well, if there's lots of text, would find a screen reader really helpful. People who are literate, people who are learning a language. It's really important to not judge people based on what technologies they're using. And basically, by not making your app accessible, you're creating barriers for people. So it's really important to try to get rid of that and bridge these. The second step in getting to great is know what your users use. So this is going to be kind of a whirlwind of introduction to all the different accessibility features on iOS, macOS, tvOS, and watchOS. So, VoiceOver. And if you see the little hammer icon, that means some support from a developer is needed. But VoiceOver is a screen reader available on iOS, macOS, tvOS, and watchOS. And it basically makes it so that people don't have to see what's happening on the screen to interact with their phone. There's some additional work you can do as developers. You can define what VoiceOver says to users, and you can control the experience. Zoom is the next kind of big one. This is on, I think all the platforms as well. But there's absolutely nothing you need to do. It just works. Yay! Invert Colors. So this is an optional hammer, which means depending on what your app is and what your app does, you might not have any cases where Invert Colors is important. But if your app maybe displays barcodes, it's very important to make sure that the barcodes are kind of inverted back to being what they would normally be. Otherwise, the barcode would be scannable. So color filters are a new thing in iOS 10, and there's grayscale is one option which has existed for a while, but there's also some newer ones that allow people who have color blindness to use devices a little bit easier. It compensates some colors so that they can differentiate them better. But there's absolutely no work to do with color filters. There's also, you can get the phone to basically speak what's on the screen, or you can highlight text and get it to read out to you. Again, nothing to do with the developer. Larger text, which we as developers usually know as dynamic type, does require some work, especially if you're using custom fonts. But this is one of the biggest things that you can really do to make a huge impact in accessibility. And it's always one of those ones where people assume like it's just old people that use larger text. And again, it's like, well, I don't have the best vision ever, and I have a really large phone, and I don't like to hold it like right up to my face, so I use large text. But you know, my dad had diabetes for quite a while, so he didn't know that his eyes were kind of going. For him, larger text means he can actually use his phone. Whereas, you know, if it didn't exist, he would have to use VoiceOver, which for him, like he also has mobility issues, so that would have been a little bit more difficult. Bold text, which obviously makes things bold. But it also, if bold text is enabled, any icons with very thin lines should be redrawn to be bolder as well. And this is on every platform except for macOS. Button shapes. So these came out with iOS 7 when all of a sudden buttons kind of became, who knows what a button is anymore. And there's nothing you need to do to support this. It just kind of works. The only control over it that you really have is by defining what the frame of your button is. Reduce transparency. So this is part of helping users increase the contrast of the display. And this is optional because if you're not using anything that uses transparency, then you don't need to implement it. But any nav bars or toolbars that are using transparency, this will automatically be handled when this is on. But if you're doing anything custom where you have like an alpha that's lower than 1, then you need to just kind of move it up to 1 when this is enabled. Darken colors is also within increased contrast, and as long as your designs have high enough color contrast, you don't really need to worry about this. But if you're, for whatever reason, using light yellow on a white background, don't. But you can can actually listen out to see if this is on. This is iOS only, but if it is on, you can basically use dark yellow, which is slightly better. Reduce white point, so there's nothing you need to do on this, but again, it helps users make the display a bit more readable. Reduce motion. So this is on iOS, watchOS, and tvOS. And there are people who, based on the animations that happen, become physically ill and can't do things. So reduce motion is a great way to provide alternate, less intense animations for users. So I forgot, was it iOS 8 or 7 when like all of a sudden you tap on an icon and it like zooms at your face. And that's it was quite a scary animation, and there's a lot of people that just makes them physically ill. So you can provide much simpler kind of crossfades, or just a simple it just appears. But it's really important to convey whatever information the animation is conveying needs to be conveyed some other way. So on-off labels are just iOS, I think. Maybe watch. I don't remember now. Yes, watch. But it basically just has 1 and 0 inside a switch. So if you're using a standard UI switch, then this will just work. Sadly, there's no way to access this, but your switches should be like, people should know when a switch is on and when a switch is off. Now this is starting to get into physical and motor impairments. Switch control is a really powerful feature that allows people to use their iPhone, iPad, Mac, and now new in tvOS 10, their Apple TV, with 1 or more switches. So it basically has a little cursor that moves across the screen. You can activate the switch, and it goes into that item and selects it. It's really amazing because it enables people who have almost no movement to be able to fully use these devices. Assistive Touch has existed for quite a while. Basically draws a little like HUD, little rounded square on your screen. And this is for people who have kind of dexterity issues, or people who can't press hardware buttons. So I think a lot of people started using this with the iPhone 4 when the home button failed. So some people might be familiar with this already. But I've seen it used quite a few times in museums where there's like an iPad installed like in a wall, and you can't access the home button, so they have Assistive Touch on. So again, not necessarily always accessibility. It's used in lots of situations. In iOS 9, we got a whole load of new touch accommodations, and these are for people who have kind of tremors or difficulty like being accurate with their taps and gestures. There's absolutely no need to do any work or testing for this. It just works. Mono audio is an optional one again. If your app doesn't really have any audio, and as long as your audio isn't conveying like if you have a stereo image and for some reason your app is making it so your users have to know where the audio is coming from, then you should, but it's kind of an edge case, really. Subtitles and captioning. This is super important. This is part of making accessibility, media accessible. With subtitles and captioning, it's really helpful for people who are hard of hearing, but also people who are maybe watching a video and it's not their first language. So it just gives them a little bit better kind of understanding context. Also really helpful if you've forgotten your headphones, or if you're in a really busy office and you can't just watch a video and have everybody hear it. There's some work possibly that needs to be done. Obviously, if your app doesn't have videos, then you're all done. If it does, then add the caption track add the subtitle track to the video. And generally, as long as you're using kind of the built-in video player, it should just work. If you're using a third-party one, you might need to look into what their support is. And then there's audio descriptions, which basically it describes what's happening on the screen in the video to users. Usually you have visual impairments, but it is used by a wide range of people who just want to know maybe a bit more. They have a video on and they're cooking, or they're in a car or something, and they just need a little bit more information. Again, it's optional because if you don't have video, it's not needed. And finally, there's guided access. And guided access also has an optional hammer. Although there is API support for guided access, it's not usually something you need to worry about. Guided access helps users focus in on performing one specific task. So basically, like a caregiver or parent it disables the home button. They're basically locked into an app, and they can draw on certain areas of the screen to say, you can't use any of these buttons. So even if the user taps on it, nothing happens. So you can provide a totally custom experience within guided access, but generally, it's not something that's necessarily unless you're developing for children or people with autism. And this is a really powerful set of features, totally above and beyond what other mobile platforms are doing, what other desktop and laptops and TVs and watches. I don't think any of the other smartwatches are nearly as accessible as the Apple Watch. If you had to actually implement VoiceOver yourself, if VoiceOver didn't exist as a concept and you had to create the whole thing, it would take so long. So you have these really powerful tools. A lot of the heavy lifting, especially if you're using UIKit and AppKit, a lot of this has been done for you, and a lot of it's just tweaking and kind of making it better. And once users enable these features, the user experience changes. So the user experience that you've designed or that your designer has designed goes out the window. You're now in a totally different place. And you can kind of distill it down to 3 different types of experiences. There's the bad experience, which is it's totally non-functional. And this is generally what you get if you're not using UIKit or AppKit. If you're using SpriteKit or SceneKit or any sort of thing that's really not kind of using UIKit or AppKit. So this is when VoiceOver won't be able to see anything on the screen. Switch control won't work. None of the text responds to larger text sizes. There's animations happening. People are throwing up. It's bad. Then you have the okay experiences, and these are functional-ish, and it's mostly usable, but it's very repetitive. Navigation is clunky. It's not easy to find the thing that you're looking for. And this is generally what you get for free if you're using UIKit and AppKit. It knows where things are on the screen. It'll figure out something to call it. It might not be the right thing to call it, but it'll kind of work. And then you have great experiences, and this is something that you have to work for. I don't really think there's any app where you just get this out of the box, sadly. But this is something that not only is usable, but it's really delightful, and that the users find it, it does everything that they want it to do and how it needs to be done. The third step in getting to great is integrating accessibility into what you do. And if you haven't done accessibility before, it can be kind of daunting to know where to start. If you have a new app, the first step is to provide designs and make accessibility part of the design phase. And once you've done that, you need to implement the designs and then, of course, test them. But if you have an existing app, the first thing you need to do is actually test your app to see what's broken. Because there'll definitely be something. There'll always be something you can improve. And once you have the list of these are the things that are broken, you can then basically design for accessibility, or really it's more like tweaking things. And then you just need to implement the design/tweaks. For designers, there's quite a few ways that you can kind of go about approaching accessibility. The first one, which I think is the most important one, is provide designs for assistive features. You should be defining what the VoiceOver experience should be. What should this button be labeled as? Should there be a hint for it? Should, you know, what should the experience be like? And this includes, you know, providing designs for what happens if somebody has the largest text size on. You know, how should the flow and the layout change? And providing these for your developers really helps kind of create that, like, you can't really get away with saying like, well, I didn't know what to do with accessibility. And if you're a developer, it's really important to also ask your designers for this. If they're two different people, if you're a designer and a developer, you just have to have a conversation with yourself about it, I guess. And the next thing I mean, this is in the human interface guidelines, but is to have large tab targets, right? This makes it much easier for a user to navigate with VoiceOver switch control on, and having things like quite separated out on the screen means it's not going to jump around and do all sorts of weird things. And don't rely on color alone to convey meaning and information. For people who are colorblind, which is about 5% of the world, just, you know, quite a few people. You know, the most popular one is red-green color blindness, so people can't differentiate between red and green. So if you have buttons or anything like that on the screen where if you're just using a green button and a red button with no text, there's 5% of users who would never know which button to press. So it's always good to have text or an icon or something to kind of back that up. File names. So designers, and this happens all the time, right? Like somebody sends you an icon and you're like, oh, can you just change it? So then the file name changes, and so instead of like trash icon, you get trash icon updated. And then you're like, oh, you know, now this, actually can you change the color, and then it becomes trash icon updated to, and you get this really long file name. VoiceOver is very clever, and if you haven't provided a label for a button, but there's an image for the button, it will actually read out the file name. So be very, very careful. I've actually like come across examples where there's been like obscenities in the file name, and you know it's the file name because it's just so weird. Lots of ad networks do this as well. They'll come across like an ad in VoiceOver and it will just read out like 185620008. What? I mean, this is kind of a quick win that if your developers don't provide a label and it is an image, you can just provide a green file name and it will work. So provide alternatives for animations so that people basically can use their device. Anything that if an animation is being used to convey like information about like in Safari, if you're in a window and you tap that and show me all the windows, and it kind of zooms out. That's a bad thing for people who have kind of motion sickness. But sadly, the way that it's fixed is it just crossfades between the window that's open and the view of all the tabs. And the problem with this is you can't actually tell which window you were looking at in the list of tabs. Whereas with the proper animation, it zooms out and you see where that window goes. So it's important to give people like whatever context and text and information animation is giving the user to still provide that in some way. And ironically, I think there is a talk about custom controls at the moment, but like custom controls, they are great, but they can provide so many like problems with accessibility when a lot of times, and I've seen this in so many designs where designers are like, well, we want to like basically reinvent a table view or something. And you're like, And the amount of work that you have to go through to make it accessible because it's not using all that built-in stuff just goes out the window. So yeah, really try to see if you can use built-in controls rather than custom ones. And finally, hierarchy navigation. Make sure that everything's presented in a way that makes sense. You know, if a user wants to take a photo, you know, where is the taking the photo button? Is it buried under menus? You know, like, it should be easy to get to. And as well as navigation, like, does it make sense? You know, to your really complicated navigation. And like these two things especially are important to pay attention to for everybody. But it is always kind of magnified when you're using something like VoiceOver or switch control. Now for developers, label everything. just as you're going, just add a label. Like accessibility label equals like play. Just do it. Like it takes no time. And it won't necessarily be a great experience for the user, but it will at least be functional, and functional is way more important than having like non-functional. And you can totally localize labels, so that's not an excuse. Make sure that everything that you're writing responds to larger text sizes, because this is a huge group of people that you're enabling to use devices. And again, custom controls. Try to talk your designers out of it if possible. I do really like custom controls. Talk them out of it if possible. There's a lot more ways that you can customize and the appearance of controls now that you couldn't before. So. Watch out for abbreviations. So this is another fun thing that VoiceOver does, where if you have limited screen real estate, so you're not going to use like the whole word. You're going to concatenate a bit. So like the weather app has, you know, like if it's raining or something, it will tell you how many inches of rain, and so it doesn't say inches. It says IN because that's the abbreviation. But unfortunately, VoiceOver actually reads that out as in. So it'll say 5.3 in. You know, but it understands usually like km. It knows that that's kilometers. So it can be a bit funny, but you can just say inches instead of IN for VoiceOver. And group any elements that you have in kind of table view and collection view cells. Like if there's 3 different labels, just combine them, have the cell say all of them together. It's a much better experience than having to like kind of swipe through every single thing on the page. And finally, the accessibility inspector. Has anybody played with the brand new accessibility inspector in iOS 8? Isn't it awesome? It's awesome. So excited. And yeah, I think it only works really well if you're using Sierra and Xcode 8. I think some of the features don't work pre-Sierra, so definitely try that. But there was a whole session video on how to use it. Definitely check that out. Now, testers. Basically, get really good at using VoiceOver and switch control. There's all sorts of kind of tutorials on how to use it, and then also learn how to use all the other features. And add accessibility testing, like make that part of your testing plan. Make it part of every single time you test the app, also test accessibility. And this to me is the most important thing you can do, is get beta testers on board who actually have impairments and use these assistive technologies. Because if you ever get to a point where you're like, man, I just don't know how I'm even going to try to make this custom thing accessible. You know, a lot of times they'll have ideas, like they live with this day in, day out. So, you know, they'll be able to suggest something. And the fourth step in getting to great is just don't stop. Like, once you've actually started implementing accessibility, don't revert back to the not doing accessibility. Accessibility is not a feature on its own. Basically, every feature that you have in your app should be accessible. So getting to great was the first step. The step is knowing your users, then knowing what your users use, integrating accessibility into what you do, and then not stopping that. So have a clear purpose, and this starts with understanding your audience, which includes people with disabilities. Be less human. Basically, don't make assumptions about your users. Technology is, not just an enabler, but also an equalizer. These are people who are maybe judged quite a bit, day in and day out, like when they go out of the house, and it provides them a platform where nobody's judging them. Nobody knows if they're blind, or if they're deaf. This provides just so much power for them. So it's really important that you don't take that away from them. Like at no point should you be you shouldn't broadcast the fact that they're using VoiceOver or something like that. Be careful about logging it in analytics because if you're using a free analytics platform that's selling the data, users could be pretty unhappy about stuff like that. And disability only exists if we don't provide a way of including people, and by not making your app accessible, you're increasing these barriers, and you're creating barriers for them. It's really not shipping disability, not shipping accessibility means you're shipping a disability. This is something you can totally avoid by providing really great experiences for people. So part 2 is the scary part. Who has an app? I'm going to live test an app for accessibility. Does anybody have any brave volunteer have an app that is an iOS app in the store that's free?
A good app or a bad app?
Sorry?
A good app or a bad app?
Either. Bad apps are interesting. Good apps are also. This is all just in the spirit of understanding how to test things. Anybody?
Bad.
Sorry.
Bad. It's bad in terms of accessibility. DWC, the application.
What's the app name?
DWC.
DWC? See?
Yeah.
TV?
Yeah. DWC TV. It's like Time Warner Cable.
Oh, Time Warner. Okay. Let me switch to. Also, I might need to make the point that it needs to be on the UK App Store because I have the UK App Store. That doesn't. BBC iPlayer. That's definitely a thing that exists. Ooh, update. Let's ignore the fact that I have 400 updates to do on this phone. Well, 308. See how good this hotel room is. Does anybody have any other suggestions for apps to try? No?
Can we ask questions when it's downloading?
Yeah. Are there any questions while this is downloading? Yes.
So you mentioned using,
Yeah.
You mentioned using dynamic type. So sometimes you work with a design team that they say, well, we want this font, and this font, and this font.
Yep.
And the only ways I've seen to implement fonts with dynamic type is pretty not very easy. So do you have any recommendations, like what to say to the design team, why it's spread fonts?
Yep, that's a great question. So the question was about using custom fonts with dynamic type. They've made dynamic type a bit easier to implement in iOS 10. But there is code online for you can just add a category and it doesn't matter what font you use. Yeah, so you can basically use any font. Yeah.
Actually, tagging off of his question, dynamic font presents a lot of other issues that are inherent to both design and appropriate usage in appropriate places.
Yeah.
And with iOS 10, their feature is that labels will automatically listen in for the notification and resize the fonts. But still inherently, there are certain areas where you can't really do an adaptive layout for it, and you still want to specify what's the max size that this label can go, what's the mid size, versus a generic conformance of I want size 16 font here, and I don't want it to go down to size 12, and I don't want it to go up to size 24.
Yeah.
The solutions that I've seen are similar to what he was saying is you end up making this robust table that's essentially like, here's my medium, here's my big, and here's my small, and then you have a mapping with every single font type, and all this ridiculousness. Is there any decent solution to that, or at least identifying where it's more appropriate to put the dynamic font size? Is it okay to leave it out in certain areas and just contextually content heavy, like I'm reading an article, put it in there?
Yeah, I mean, for example, so the question was about kind of what things that don't necessarily have to respond to dynamic type.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, things like in navigation bars, that stuff doesn't change. Tab bars don't change. So there's definitely places where it's fine. Usually, if there's like an icon or something else that a user can use, like.
What if you have like a table view cell with, I don't know, 4 items, 5 items aligning in very, very particular manners?
Yeah, I think.
Support it.
Yeah.
Just do it.
Just do
And
it.
the designers will hate you.
Auto layout. I think auto layout can do a lot of that kind of stuff, where you can kind of you can define constraints and stuff. But I haven't tried too much. Although you can just tell certain things to not honor
Do you
dynamic
usually
type.
have like designers say where it seems appropriate, or do you usually identify that from a developer perspective?
I've not worked with many designers who even want to try to provide other designs for larger text sizes, because I think it's kind of why they like iOS.
Less work.
Yeah, way less work. It used to just be one screen size. But yeah, I mean, I guess it depends, because a lot of it depends on kind of what the experience is, and if a designer is really just designing static screens, then they might not really understand what size something should be. So yeah, I guess it depends on.
Another question regarding accessibility labels, since that's a vocal feature that users will interact with and see.
Yeah.
Who usually defines that in your experience of what the verbiage is?
So usually everybody that I've known, it's the developers who do it. But I think it would be really great if designers start getting more involved with that, because they're the ones who usually kind of dictate the experience. And it is an experience. VoiceOver, when you use VoiceOver, it's a different way of interacting with the app. And a lot of times the designers have more understanding about context, and having them to actually work through that will help them clarify their designs more as well. But pretty much everybody I know, it's always the developers that do it.
Gotcha.
Anybody have a quick question? It's almost done.
I guess as a final question,
Yeah.
where do you usually localize your labels for accessibility?
I mean, so I don't use storyboards or zibs usually. So all of my accessibility is like done in code. So I just always make sure that whatever text I'm providing is localized.
You don't use them period, or you don't use them for localization?
So
I said you don't use them period, or you don't use them for localization?
storyboards and zibs and stuff, I just don't really use them that much. I do some game development, so it's
fair there.
It's difficult with ScriptKit. VoiceOver is fast. Yeah.
What do you use in the screen connections? This is pretty cool.
It's QuickTime player. Yeah. Yeah, the audio doesn't come through the computer though. Cool. So, welcome to iPlayer. So this will be a very quick. So some of the stuff here looks like it's actually responding to bold text, maybe. It's kind of hard to tell. That sounded like it skipped a bunch of stuff. That's interesting. Let's see what that does. Yeah, I think I have a British person So I'm originally American, but I live in the UK, so I'm like both. Yeah.
So there's one problem that we ran into, and that's with reading out. If you have one label with multi-line text and different attributes inside of it, and you want to pause attributes or enable different selections, how do you usually take that approach?
Don't use it. Just don't. I mean, you can provide a different. Have you provided an actual accessibility label for it, or are you just relying on the fact that it's?
Yeah, if you have like a big content area and there are pauses that you explicitly want in certain areas, it seems to not be able to dictate that, or unless you trick it and you add like views above it, and you have to do all this crazy work and align it with dynamic text ending. It seems like it's a complete hassle when it comes to that, especially when auto layout plays so well with one label and attributed strings and the rest, and now you've got to divvy out 10 different labels and dynamic resizing.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way to add pauses really. I know there's people who've come up with some like weird hacks and stuff, but generally very dangerous to do.
That's what I've seen.
Actually, today, I was going to change the font size to larger. It's very confusing because when you do plug it into QuickTime, it changes the time to 9:41. It's not 9:41. Not in any country. Large text. Let's go back to... Okay, so our menu button is cool. Cool, so we know that that's a search. Are there any TV shows we want to search for? Sorry?
Is it my voice? What is this? Is it my voice? What is this? Organization. Search. Backup. Organization. Heading. Close. Double tap location.
So to me that's a little strange that there's a back button to go to search, but also a close button that makes you back to search. Which, I mean, is almost more visible when you have VoiceOver on.
Yes, it takes all I can help you. Is it my voice? 36 minutes. Broadcast on. BT1. Is it my voice? Live. That is it. When the count on you broadcast the first time, it's last session. Everything now. It is. And probably will.
I'm gonna pause that. But basically, like it's combined all those separate labels together so that it's just one thing when it's reading out. I think I'm almost out of time actually.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
No, that's a good thing that it combines stuff, because if I had to actually go through each item, that would be really tedious, and it's easy to lose your place. Like every time you have to swipe, it gets very, very confusing.
We have some shows after that implements as well.
Sorry, hold on. Also, before I go, I think I'm out of time.
Is it my voice? What is it?
I have some really cool accessibility stickers that you totally need in your life. Yeah. There's like a fist bump one and some other ones. They're very cool. Come find me. And if you have any other questions, just let me know. But thank you very much for coming.